Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our xAPI Cohort Spring Kickoff. Welcome to our cohort here. I'm thrilled to be welcoming you here. My name is David Kelly. I am the CEO of the Learning Guild, and we're thrilled to have you here to kick off another 12 weeks of learning and exploring what xAPI can do and how it can transform our organizations. We're going to kick things off with our panel discussion for week one in just a few minutes, but I wanted to spend a little bit of time at the start to give you a little bit of an orientation of what the cohort's going to be. Many people have gone through the cohort experience before. There are a few changes this time that you should be aware of, but many of you are also going through the cohort for your first time. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time this morning giving you an opportunity to understand what's going on in the cohort and what you can expect. Now, what is the cohort? Let's start there. There's a lot of different ways we could define the cohort, but I define it as a community, a growing community of learning professionals exploring how to transform organizational learning through xAPI adoption. There's a lot of different ways that this takes shape, and there's a lot of different types of content throughout this program that you're going to see. But ultimately, we're going to be doing this as a community, and that's one of the things that's really special about the cohort. It's been around for 16 or so different iterations. We do this twice a year, spring and in the fall. And there's over 6,300 people, over 6,300 people that have gone through this program and continue to be a part of this community. So what does it look like in practice? What is the cohort experience going to be like for you? There are four primary elements that are part of the cohort experience that you should be aware of. First one are weekly web sessions. That's what we're doing right now. Every week we get together and we have a session dedicated to learning more about xAPI. There's also the ongoing community that I mentioned. There's all the people that have been part of this community that continue to be part of this community, and we help each other learn more about it and how we can apply this in our organizations. There's also a major project-based learning component of the xAPI cohort, where you have the ability to put this into practice, to form teams or work as individuals to get together and build something with xAPI as you're learning about it, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. And the last piece of the cohort experience are a host of on-demand resources they have available. Just want to take a minute to go through each one of these so you can see what it is. Starting with the web sessions. So the web sessions take place at this time every single Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, or wherever that equates to locally for you. If you want to see the schedule of what we're going to be exploring every single week, you can do that within this AirMeet platform. There's a schedule option there. You can see what's going on every single week. Or you can go to our website, xapicohort.com, and the full program is available there as well. But every single week, we're going to get together live as a community in this platform for exploration of different ways that xAPI can be used in your organization. And then we have the ongoing community. As I mentioned, we've had over 6,300 people from all around the globe that have gone through the cohort in the years since ADL and Torrance Learning and now the Learning Guild have been shepherding it. And all of those people are part of this community. The hub of that community ultimately is Slack. Everyone who's gone through this cohort, while the cohorts run over 12 weeks, the Slack community is ongoing. It is there throughout every single cohort. So as new people join the cohort, they're joining the existing Slack community, not necessarily a new one. And everyone should have gotten an invite into that platform. If you didn't get that invitation, Karen, behind the scenes, if you wouldn't mind taking that link that we have so people can get it directly, and dumping that in the chat, that would be great. I appreciate it. But I encourage you to join the community because that's where you can meet all the people who are going through this journey with you or people who are continuing to go through this journey who've participated in other cohorts. Once you join, a couple of pointers that I want you to be aware of that you should be looking for. On that left-hand side within the Slack workspace, there'll be a lot of different channels there. Some of the ones you should be on the lookout for are main. This is the primary one. This is where when you join, you can introduce yourself to the group. It's the primary channel that applies to all cohort-wide messaging. There's also a social channel as well. This is more the water cooler where you can go in and connect with people on a more personal level, share things that may not necessarily be xAPI related. We also have a resources and recordings channel. This is a great place to post resources that you find that are useful to people. You'll find the links to the recordings from sessions in there as well, and any sort of resources that you are using that you feel could be helpful to people's adoption of xAPI, you can share in that channel. You'll also see a series of channels there that start with the word team. Team channels are for conversations pertaining to those xAPI projects I mentioned a moment ago, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about it in a moment. And then there are a series of channels there that start with the word discuss. These are channels for topical conversations that are not related to a particular project that you're doing. Now, when you sign into it, you may not necessarily see all of these channels. Some of them will be there by default, like main and some of the other ones that are there, but other ones you may not necessarily see by default. If you want to explore the channels that are available, you go to the top heading that's at the top of the channel listing. There's a little plus there. And when you click on it, you'll see Browse Channels and Create a Channel. Browse Channels will give you the option to see all the different channels that are there, and you can join any of the ones that you're interested in being a part of. And then if you have a conversation that you'd like to start, you can hit the Create a Channel to start a conversation channel by yourself. So that's the online community through Slack. Now we have the xAPI projects. The xAPI projects are a big part of the xAPI cohort experience. It gives you the opportunity to learn by doing, by being part of, or by observing. You can be a part of a team, or you can just observe what other teams are doing. But this project-based learning aspect of xAPI cohort is a big part of the experience. The projects are not assigned in any way. They are driven by participants' shared interests. They can be driven by a team or by an individual, and they're generally formed organically by the participants. That takes place within Slack as well. This tends to be the hub of where the teams are. And if you're interested in starting a team or exploring teams, it generally starts within the main category. If you wanted to start a project and see if other people are interested, go into main and share details about it. That you're interested in doing a project on X sort of a topic or using these sort of technologies. Is anyone interested? Put that into main so people know that it exists. And also, if you're interested in seeing the projects that are there, or if you want to be observing, maybe you don't have the bandwidth to participate in a team, but you want to join in yourself, or you want to see what they're doing, you can join a Slack channel, even just to observe what the participants are doing. And that's one of the things that's really important to realize about your experience within the xAPI cohort. There is no right or wrong way to decide on what level of engagement that you want. You can take and participate at a level that works for you. You can passively just watch the recordings. You can participate by driving a project. You can participate by observing a project. It's really up to you. You decide what sort of experience that you want to have while you're here, taking advantage of as much or as little of the resources that are available to you. And the last thing that was also there, I mentioned, if you wanted to create a channel for yourself, if you're going to start a project and you want to do a team, you're going to go to that channels option that I mentioned earlier, go to the top, choose create a channel, and you'll get a window that pops up. When you create a channel related to a project, just start it with the word team so that all the projects start with that word team, and then just use a description in here. The one that you're seeing on the screen here is just one that I put together as an example that I want to explore xAPI related to its use within virtual classroom environments. And I would do that, put the description in there so that people can see what the project is about, hit create, and that will now be available as a channel that people can join and explore. One other thing, now once you're in the project, once a project is set, there's no specific parameters around what technologies you can or should use. Based on the project that you're in, the project participants decide which technologies they want to leverage within there. The one technology that is available that I encourage you to consider using is this platform here in AirMeet. If you go to the top of your screen, when you're in this platform, you'll see that there, besides reception, there's also an area at lounge that looks similar to the image you have on your screen. These are essentially virtual classroom tables that are available 24/7. This platform is available to you at all times. So if you, as your team, want to get together live, you can use this platform. You can say, hey, let's meet in the AirMeet platform. We'll set up a table. You just click the Create Table button, and anybody who's got access to this platform can join, and you have your conversation similar to if you use just a typical Zoom or other virtual collaboration tool. So this is available to you as a resource to converse with people around Teams or on anything that you want. It's available at all times. And one thing specific about this AirMeet platform that you should also realize, week to week, there's not a different link to go to access the different sessions every single week. You have one link that is going to give you access to this platform, and all of the sessions will take place in the same platform. So you can come to the same link week after week. The last section of your cohort experience is around on-demand resources. And there's a host of them that are available. It's a growing library of resources that are available. First off, as I mentioned, there's about 16 iterations of this cohort, 12 weeks of sessions every single time. They're all recorded. So there is an enormous library of sessions. We do 12 weeks. It's a large curriculum, but even through 12 separate web sessions, you're not going to cover everything that you need to know about xAPI. We're not going to be able to do every possible topic that's in there, but we do iterate on the program every single time. There are some core elements that are in every single program, but there are also elements that we add and bring in differently each time. So even if there's a particular topic you want to explore that may not necessarily be part of this current cohort's program, you should check the resources there, because it might have been addressed in a session in a previous cohort. You can find all of the recordings either at xAPIcohort.com or on the xAPI Cohort YouTube page. There's also a weekly email that comes out related to the cohort. Make sure you're getting this. For a lot of people, these emails can sometimes go into your spam filter. So if you haven't seen any of the emails that came through, make sure you check your spam filter. If it did land there, add it to your safe senders list so that it comes into your primary mailbox. Every single week, not only will we remind you about the session and send you a link to the recording, but the emails also contain additional resources that you can use to expand upon the topics that we're talking about in the weekly sessions, and also just to expand the breadth of types of materials that you're going to explore to expand your knowledge and skills in the xAPI space. So make sure you're checking out those resources. We also have done a lot of research on on how xAPI is done. Our most recent report collaborated with Megan Torrance was on the state of xAPI adoption. These are all available on our website, learningguild.com. If you're not a member of the Guild, I do encourage you to join. It's completely free. There's a lot of different resources that are there, a host of resources that can expand upon your xAPI journey. So I encourage you to visit learningguild.com and get a free membership to get access to our research reports and all of our ebooks and session recordings that are available to you as part of that free membership. If you haven't already done so, please do so, because there's a lot of resources that can expand upon your membership, your value there. And everything that we do online is just one component of the Guild does. I know a lot of people are looking forward to getting together together face-to-face. We do host xAPI conversations at our face-to-face events. Our next one is going to be in April in Orlando. That's the Learning Solutions Conference. There are a number of sessions on the program that directly and indirectly support the adoption of xAPI. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to learningsolutionscon.com to learn more about that conference. And as we get into the fall, we have DevLearn. That's where we'll be hosting the second annual xAPI User Conference. We'll get more details on that in the weeks ahead. But we do a lot of xAPI conversations at our face-to-face events as well, and you should consider adding some of those to your agenda. So I went through all of that very quickly, and I'm sure a lot of you may have additional questions. We're not going to spend too much time this morning going over the bones of how the cohort works. I went through that extremely quickly. But after we have our panel discussion that kicks off the cohort this week, I'm going to stay in this room. If anyone has any additional questions about the cohort, about resources, about how this all works, feel free to stay in this room after the panel discussion ends today. I'm happy to stay in this room and answer any questions that other people may have. And if you, beyond just the time that we're spending here today, if at any point you have any questions, you need any sort of technical support, or you have feedback on your cohort experience, please do reach out to us at xAPIcohort@learningguild.com. So that said, if anyone has any questions, we'll deal in it. But I'm really excited to move on from our start up here. If you have any questions at all, again, this session is just going to continue at the close of the panel, and we'll just continue the discussions from there. But let's get into that panel discussion, because I'm really excited to welcome our guest here today. When we thought about how we wanted to kick off the panel here today, the cohort this year, one of the things we were discussing as a team was what are the themes? What are some of the things we want to talk to? And over the next 12 weeks, you're going to get a lot of details on what you have to do to launch an xAPI program, how to do it technically, and how all of this works and ties together with what you're already doing. But what we wanted to do to kick things off is explore why. Why is all of this important? Why is all of this meaningful to the work that we do and to the future of L&D? And we've brought some people in here today who are actually going to be part of the program later on. There are going to be 2 weeks during the program, during this the 12 weeks. 2 of the weeks are dedicated to xAPI in practice sessions, where we have people who are applying it in their organization, sharing their experiences, case study sessions. And we've invited 3 of those people to be part of the panel today to help explore that question of why. Why are we doing this? Why is this important to the work that we do? So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Actually, I'm going to share back for a second. I did that 1 second too early, because I want to introduce you to the people that are here that are going to be joining us. I'm thrilled to be welcoming Rachel Arpin. Nicola Mastroielli, and Julian Davis. They are our guests here today. Karen, if you can help bring them onto the stage, and we're going to have a conversation on why xAPI is so important to the work that we do. While Karen is bringing them onto the stage, I want to encourage you. We have some questions that we as a group have kind of put together at the bones of this conversation that we're going to be referencing. But if you have questions as you are coming through, and I'm just looking at the chat now. Good. If you have questions as these are coming for the group as we're going through, please feel free to use the Q&A function of this platform. We'll look for questions in there as well. So with that, I am going to bring up my own document here and welcome our group. Rachel, Nicola, and Julian, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Good morning.
Glad to have you all. And mic check complete. Nicola, good to see you. All right. Okay. So before we get started with some of the questions, I just want to give each of you a moment to introduce yourself to the group. Tell us a little bit about yourself and share a little bit about the work that you do. And I'm just going to go in the order I see on the screen here. So Nicola, I will start with you.
Okay. Thank you, David. It's a real pleasure to see so many people interested in xAPI. My name is Nicola Mastroielli. I'm talking to you from Italy, near to Venice, the most romantic place in the world. I'm working. I've been working on xAPI for many years, since it wasn't called xAPI. But actually, I am an xAPI consultant and trainer, and practically, I almost use xAPI for all my activities, training programs, coaching programs, and other consultancy stuff. I'm really happy to see many people because I'm fond of about xAPI, and I think that it should be the future for our works. Okay.
Welcome. Thank you. Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Rachel Arpin, coming from the second most romantic city, Columbus, Ohio. I'm a learning and development consultant at The Ohio State University, specifically the James Cancer Hospital. And as far as xAPI goes for our organization, we're still pretty new and in the infancy stages of it, exploring how we can support it kind of institutionally with our tools. Yeah, I see an IO out there and an OH. Yeah. Personally, I've implemented only 2 projects with xAPI, so I want to set some expectations here. I'm kind of bringing in the if I can do it, y'all can do it kind of perspective. And I'm very excited to talk about this today.
Thank you. And Julian.
G'day, good morning. I'm Julian Davis, and I'm coming to you from Brisbane, Australia, nice and early, and I've already had my first cup of coffee for the morning already. So I am head of digital systems and architecture for a small startup that we have here in Australia called Qualnet. And my involvement with xAPI goes back to the first spec release of 0.91 back in 2016, I think it was 2013, 2016. And I have a high technical background in web development and training. So I kind of merged the two together. And I've been using it on many things across the years. It started where I needed to get some student analytics. And with another PHP developer, I developed some a custom plugin, but it wasn't good enough. And this is when I discovered xAPI, and that just opened a whole new world. So since then, I continue to champion it. I think it's amazing what it can do, not just in learning, but across the board. It's awesome. I've gone into profiles now. I'm working with profiles. I noticed this guy, Brian Duck, was on here. We worked together in building one of the cohorts. So I was just a member of a cohort a couple of sessions ago, and we looked at bringing latitude and longitude, so geolocation, into xAPI, and ended up writing the profile for it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool with what it can do. And yeah, I am a self-confessed nerd.
And I see a lot of people in the chat identifying with being new to this. Find each other, find each other and help each other through this. It can seem overwhelming based on some of the topics that we talk about here. So kind of like getting on a treadmill that's already on a high speed. And we're going to put resources in place to help you with that. But make sure you find each other, because there is no right or wrong way to do this. There's just a right or wrong way to do it for yourself. And you need to find the resources that are necessary to do that. So I want to hear a little bit more about each of your stories here, because I mentioned in the intro here that we're exploring the why here. Each of you at some point made a choice to go down this road. And I would like to know why you made that choice. What was it that drove you to personally start exploring xAPI and build projects around it? We'll go in reverse order for this question. Julian, we'll start with you.
Well, like I said earlier, I initially saw it as a solution to a problem that I had, and it was still very, very new. So there were not a lot of resources on it. And it's as I delved deeper into it and understood, and the key word for me here was, once I understood its interoperability, that just blew my mind. It just completely blew my mind of what you could do with it. So I've been on the, like I said, I've been on the journey for 7 years, and continue to be on the journey. And that's how, so I kind of fell into it. If that's, it was still very new. It was still known as Tin Can back then, because it was still in its principal early stages. So to actually, for want of a better term, grow up with xAPI, it's been brilliant for me.
So just to touch on one element of what you said there, and again, keeping an eye on some of the newbies here, you mentioned how important the interoperability is. Can you explain what that is and why it's so important?
So I guess one of the things that I see a lot is xAPI is replacing SCORM. So a lot of our learners out there would know what SCORM is. It's been around for a very, very long time. And SCORM is not really interoperable in that sense. And you also don't get a lot of information out of SCORM, whereas xAPI really allows you to get an understanding of what somebody is doing, but not just in SCORM. You can start looking at it from PDF documents, from videos, from anything that can support, for want of a better term, anything that can support JavaScript and has connectivity. You can capture xAPI on it. So all of a sudden, your learning system, if we focus on the learning side of it, has suddenly become decentralized. So you can have learning content coming from anywhere, and then be able to report on it through your learning record store where xAPI is captured.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Rachel, what brought you on this journey?
Yeah, so I think I was hearing about xAPI from a lot of different directions, like what Julian was just talking about with the interactability and things being able to like push based on your experiences already. That fascinated me, and I'm still working on getting there. But then also being able to answer questions beyond just, is it complete? And beyond what was the score, but how did people engage? So my context that I'm coming from is learning and development. And so how are people engaging with what I'm designing? And like, what are they clicking fast through, and what are they going deeper on? What matters to them? And so those were some things that really were kind of like those research questions that started coming up for me of this, could this help me answer some of those?
Excellent. Thank you. And Nicola?
Why I start working on xAPI and when? Over 10 years ago, I attended a speech held by Mike Rastisi and Aaron Silvers in Milan, here in Italy. They were bringing xAPI in Europe, and listening the two speeches, I understood that xAPI could be something that could bring together learning experience and also business data. At that time, I was working on a new app, a new web application that could manage learning data, learning experiences, and also business intelligence from performance and business data. So I thought that xAPI could merge the two different worlds together, and I put my head inside, and I felt in love with xAPI, because I found that the first promises of xAPI could be amazing for and disruptive for our industry.
So I'm curious. Each of you touched on the value of the data that's there, and the how it can inform what we do as learning professionals. But our organizations need to buy into that. So I'm kind of curious, having done some projects, what are the things that your organization is finding valuable as you continue to use xAPI? Anyone want to take a first shot at
that? Okay, I'll jump in. Mine was so I've done a lot of projects with xAPI. One of the standouts has been video. So we use video a lot for our learning content. But how do we know if someone's skipping a video just for the purpose of getting to the end to complete it? So with xAPI, you can include if they're seeking back or forward, and from what point to what point. You can see if they're playing, pausing, and then from that data, you can then run some analytics to actually find out whether the video is any good and people are being bored, or whether they're just skipping forward. Selling that to the stakeholders within a business is actually relatively easy, because it's something that's relatable to them. You don't have to talk about the technical aspect of it. And that has seemed to work for me, particularly from the video perspective.
I can come at it from there's the two projects that I mentioned that I did. One of the main values was it's helped us make some decisions about content. So one of the projects that we have is an anti-racism action plan. We created this like art gallery museum experience where visitors can go and explore different topics. We started off with microaggressions and implicit bias, and it's completely open exploration. You can go anywhere in any order. It's like you're walking through a museum kind of thing. And so xAPI on the backhand has helped me kind of map how people are progressing through that experience. What are people visiting? What are they not visiting? And then still also trying to figure how do I capture some reactionary data in that as well. What do they like? What do they not like? What do they want to see more of? And being able to do that in an anonymous setting as well, so that people can engage with the content and reflect and submit questions that help us make decisions on what goes into it. Behind the scenes, we're collecting all of this information that helps us know what 2.0 is going to look like. But on their end, they're just kind of going through a gallery. So that's been really valuable for both projects, being able to see kind of that path that people travel through these more open world experiences.
For me, my first main big project using xAPI was similar to the Rachel's one. I was in charge to create a seamless experience in a training academy, in a training lab. So there were different spaces with different activities, and I used xAPI to create a seamless experience, because people can start making something in one space, and then they can move in another room and leave another type of experience. So the statement, the xAPI statement, led me to create a stream of a unique stream of experiences from all the rooms, all the places, and I think that I'm this. This concept, this stream and seamless concept in xAPI, I think that is really useful for my work, because also when I use xAPI in a classroom or in a workshop, I can extend the experience also after the workshop. I can follow my attendees, my working group, also after, also in asynchronous way. And I think that this is a really interesting features of xAPI.
So I'm looking at, there's a couple of questions coming through the Q&A, and one of the ones that's interesting, the first one, well, they're both interesting, but the first one that comes through, I want to reposition it in a way, because the question, I'm going to read it off first and then explain why I wanted to reposition it. It's, thank you for the introductions. Julian mentioned the ability to track if a user is jumping inside a video to a different time. I am wondering if you can explain how we can obtain that information. That's kind of a session in and of itself to kind of walk through that process, but it's reflective of the complexity that's involved in doing something like this. And I'm kind of curious, for both of your journeys, to get to the point where you could do a project. What were some of the things that you did to kind of just begin learning, to tiptoe your way to get to that tipping point between understanding what this is and applying it in your work?
Don't be scared to try. The amount of failures that I've had along the way, I've lost count of how many failures, and that's yeah. Don't be afraid to try. There is, from when the time I started to where we are now, the amount of articles and blogs and help guides that are available online are brilliant. They really, really are. Yeah, that's but the biggest thing I can say there is don't be afraid to try. You can't break anything. If I could put it that way, you actually can't even delete an xAPI statement. The spec doesn't allow you to do it. So you get in there and try and do these sessions, because these sessions will actually help you understand the whole connectivity of how xAPI works. And yeah, get involved and play.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on that? I'm going to look at there's a couple of other questions that came through chat, so before I move more onto ours. So I'm pivoting on a question that I see Amanda's in here. We're talking about publishing things that can do xAPI statements, but what are the, without mentioning specific tools, because it's not you need a specific tool, what are the major tool components of your ecosystem that you have in place in order to support xAPI? What are the major things that are part of your stack of things that are part of an experience that are critical to your ability to launch these programs?
So I did use Articulate Storyline for the things that I built, but I did not use the built-in xAPI functionality of that. But I'm a no coder. So I use the tools that help me to create xAPI statements without having to actually create JavaScript, and that stuff's kind of scared of me. I want to learn it. Let me put it this way. I don't know it yet. That's my phrase. I don't know it yet. And so I used, I don't know if, like you said, not necessarily naming specific tools, but there was a tool that came out of this cohort actually that really helped me with that. And yeah, no coding xAPI was fabulous.
I'm just checking the chat for any more questions that are in here that we can pull in. There was a question, I think it was related to what you were talking about, Nicole, related to what is an example of how you can follow after a workshop? What does that look like? Did you catch that question, Nicola?
Okay.
I
For
think
me,
that one was for you, yeah.
Okay, an example of the workshop. Actually, I'm using me too. I'm not a developer. Okay, and from my background is more as a learning experience designer, but during my past years, I have learned something, a bit of JavaScript, and actually I'm using low code and no code tool, Zapier, Integromat, and many other tools, and I'm using these tools to create prototypes, rapid prototypes. And for example, today I have held a workshop using, for example, this kind of device connected to a Google Sheet and connected to Zapier. And then these dice with 8 faces could send a statement from the classroom, from the interaction with the classroom. And I'm trying to use many different devices, many different tools, connecting with a technology stack made by low code and no code. We need just to know something about JavaScript a little bit, and you can set up in a very small amount of time. You can create prototypes. Sometimes I made 2 days workshop, and in 2 days we can create a really useful prototypes to show, to demonstrate, or to try to track and record some experiences that are useful for the organization.
So I'm going to be mindful of the time we have left here, but I do want to talk a little bit. I want to come back to that core question that we talk about is why. And normally when we talk about why, we talk about it in the why would I go forward, why would I do this? But I kind of want to flip the script a little bit. We talk about xAPI and we tend to talk about all the things that we do to get to this endpoint. But all three of you are a little bit on the other side, different layers of what on the other side is, but you've implemented projects in your organizations. And having gone through that experience, come through the challenges and the opportunities in that, and come through the other side, I kind of want to get your lens on why this is so important. Like, how do you look at your work differently? What has it meant to how you view your work as a learning professional? And help us understand why this conversation is so important as someone who's come through it on the other side. Anyone want to take the first shot of that?
I think it unlocks potential. And I used the term decentralized learning earlier. And I think that's exactly what this now does, is that you'll hear a lot of acronyms, LXP, LRS, LMS, all those L's acronyms. And xAPI decentralizes all of that. So it allows so much more. And the more I delve into it, the more that I find what you can do with it. If you think outside the box, you can pretty much do it.
That's great.
I think for me, every time I show, like I'm at an xAPI cohort or talking with my fellow colleagues about this stuff, I just feel inspired by what it can do. And like even just here, the three of us have shared different examples and applications of it, like the pushing of, information back and forth for content and adaptive learning purposes. The 8-sided dice that you just showed, my D&D heart just exploded. I was just so happy. Yeah, I love that. And then like, of all of these things that I've heard that xAPI can do over time, granted, I feel like I don't know how to make that happen, but the fact that that thought has been incepted, that dream has been implanted, and maybe that can inspire something in the future, I feel like that's why it's so important, because it keeps us pushing forward and getting better.
Excellent.
For me, the big why of xAPI actually in this moment is probably linked to the period we are living. I don't know if it's the same in your country, but this is a really hard time in Europe and in other country, and also in this post-pandemic era, many organizations are rethinking the way we work. Okay, and I think that the structure, the core of xAPI, that is bidirectional. I think that one of the most important thing in xAPI is that the experience is tracked in a bidirectional way. I mean, there is someone that are learning something, but I can also track who is in charge of this experience: a teacher, a trainer, someone else. So I think that companies now can have a more detailed picture of how we learn, how we interact, how we collaborate. And I think that today this is the most important challenge for companies, because this time needs companies that are reactive, that are adaptive, and xAPI can describe the organization and the collaboration and the interaction in a perfect way. So I think that xAPI was amazing 10 years ago, but today is really disruptive for the situation we are living in this moment.
Excellent. I want to be mindful of time. We have time for one more brief question, but before I ask it, I know there were a couple of other questions that came through chat. Some of them I can, as I'm looking here, I can answer directly in chat because they're kind of technical ones that we can just provide a direct answer to. But I encourage any of you that might have had a specific question for any of our panelists, connect with them on LinkedIn, reach out to them there. They're all wonderful people, very giving, and if you had a specific question for any of them, by all means, do reach out to them. So all of you have been through the cohort experience or an experience like it in the past. This can all seem a little overwhelming for a lot of people coming in, especially newbies coming in. But you've used the cohort as an experience and experiences like it. So what's one piece of advice that you would give people coming into this cohort as we kick things off that's going to help them have a more successful experience?
I think what Julian said earlier really resonated with me. Like, jump in, and it's okay to be new. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. Like, it's okay to suck at xAPI right now. Just just add yet to your gap statement. You don't know how to do xAPI yet. You'll get there.
I think that's the tagline for the next cohort. It's okay to suck at xAPI.
It's okay to suck it.
Other thoughts?
My little humble advice is to have fun with xAPI. I really like the T-shirt of Julian, and yeah, wonderful, amazing. And many years ago, I made some poster that I call xAPI at the movies, and I ask people to tell me what is your favorite movie scene. And then I took the scene and I translate using an xAPI statement. This is a really simple game exercise, and I use it, for example, during my workshop for introduce and explain that xAPI can be applied to everything. And so I suggest that if you have a passion, you love to run, to make something, you can start studying how I can apply xAPI to my passion. I run, so I remember that I have tried to take the data from my app and translate in a statement. This is the right way to start studying xAPI. Start from our passion.
Excellent, thank you. Julian.
So I was just reading some of the questions, and it looks like, Rachel, you've already kicked off a particular project of Dungeons and Dragons and kicking off. So that looks really cool. So if I could use that, I don't know Dungeons and Dragons. I wasn't that much of a nerd. I was a bit of a rebel teenager, so I wasn't that much of a nerd. See, to me,
coming from the guy with the xAPI shirt, I wasn't that much of a nerd. Oy.
Okay, touche. Is I would sit on the fringe of it. So you don't have to get involved in every single project, but have a look at the projects that come along. Definitely attend all the recordings or all the sessions if you can, because there is such a plethora of information out there from different people with different experiences, targeting different, from newbies to technical, the whole lot. And you don't have to get involved in a project. Sit on the fringes, see what people are doing, and one might take your fancy and jump into that. But I would suggest, if you are new and not sure, just sit on the fringes. Find one of the teams on Slack, subscribe to it, and see if something takes your fancy.
Excellent. Well, those are some great tips. I want to, as we hit our close here, I just want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for joining us here for the panel today. I want to thank everyone here who's joined us as live or whether you're watching this recording. A big round of applause for Julian, Rachel, and Nicola for joining us here today for our opening panel. This does conclude our opening session. Though I mentioned at the beginning, for anyone who has any questions about the cohort experience and any technical challenges, I'm going to hang out in the room here, continue to answer any questions there, so you can feel free to use Q&A and do that. But we are closing here. Julian, Rachel, Nicola, thank you again so much for joining us here today and helping us have a successful kickoff.
Thank you.